A very good morning to everybody present here. My name is Aishwarya Gupta, a research scholar in linguistics at the English and Foreign Languages University, Lucknow. And first of all, thank you to all the professors of CIL, LSI, and Ecole Sci 43 for organizing this and giving us this amazing opportunity to present before you. It's indeed an honor that we research scholars sort of follow the footsteps and the footprints that of you dignified professors to take the science of linguistics forward. So basically, that is the topic. It's Mahatma Gandhi's Trinity of Sustainability, Reintegration, Resilience, and Recovery, which is a positive discourse analytical interlude for the modern era today. Now, Mahatma Gandhi, a father of the nation, of course, needs no introduction. Around 106 years ago, when he descended onto India's soil after his academic study in 1918 and embarked on a journey of independence, his ideals galvanized the people. And that is infallible even today. From freedom fighter to leader and the barrister, we've grown up listening his stories in our history textbooks. But here's some of the questions for you to consider, that what makes Gandhi so captivating? What is that sustainability question that we intend to find out? And that is exactly what it aligns with this paper. The first is, when he talks of non-cooperation, what does reintegration look like? Why were the people so attracted to him? The second is, what are the non-violent communicative elements? Does it just violence, or is it something more? The second is, why is change so effective to stir up problem-solving conversations? Is it more than the aspects of resilience and recovery that he talks about or that he implies? And so the Gandhian linguistic spin, as you saw the questions, and his discoursal masterpieces spurred action. And that shows no sign of aging. How? Basically through positive discourse analysis, exemplifying the trinity of sustainability at the context of appraisal methodologies. Now, while nature is renovating, and we are promising new harvest, I'm not going to describe him with any political or democratic ideologies that have been worked a lot till date. I'll be exploring recognizability factors, which is sort of an organic wholeness, when there is a need to focus on structures of right communication to diffuse tension faster amongst interlocutors, to restore relationships, because it harnesses the most powerful social force, which is called the arguments. So as you can see here, they are intercentric ideologies, because that kind of brutalizing experience blends with the ethical consilience, inspire audiences, drive our decisions, and that shows us the means and faith towards sustainable solutions. The next is, that's the positive discourse analysis. And why I mention this continuously is because it's far from being merely academic. These doctrines have had real effect on people's behavior. Contemporarily speaking, today we studying linguistics know that words move us to action, shapes our thought patterns, and from what to buy, to whom to elect, to whether or not to go for protest. And as Dr. Rao rightly iterated on the very first day, that language empowers the individual in social status. So this positive discourse analysis using appraisal theory is by James Martin and Peter Roberts Rupert White. They are both professors in the University of Sydney. And they put forward this concept to build a better world, rather. And they were actually working on deconstructing CDA, and they came up with this yin-yang approach that they call sort of constructive enough to think beyond the language of text. Focusing on the positive uses of linguistic features. So it's sustaining, it's productive, it's cooling down and accord rather than just discriminative and critical approaches. And it's a form of amplifying the intensity of optimism. That's what I want to say. So the analytical intention is basically progressive in nature, as we would see in Gandhian sermons, that works towards a better future. And as Martin puts it, it's on unrealized alternative directions, possibilities for transformations, mitigating social ills, and enhancing human flourishment. Next is, what this whole positive discourse analysis actually structures the way we perceive reality. So these canons were the principal architects of his positive discourses: peace, self-suffering, sacrifice, all these metaphysics that I would rather call, is a moving on and a forward-looking process. It encounters inequalities in human social structures and damaging communication as a replacement with advanced healing, human dignity, and independence. Now, linguistically, it consists of the three main comprehensive systems that are attitude, engagement, and amplification, or graduation. Now, these three of positive discourse analysis, or call it appraisal rather, are placed within the Gandhian trinity of sustainability to study how language users give language objects through language. So it actually presents you can see, if you've seen the videos of and the writings of Mahatma Gandhi, it presented a worldview that values optimism and knowledge sharing, empowering, protecting brotherhood and within and beyond the nation, with growth as the core paradigm while confronting injustices. Now, apart from this, positive discourse analysis has a methodological basis, and it's very similar. I wouldn't say it's similar, but it's a kind of an offshoot to CDA, because it is a detailed inquiry of revealing hidden but text, um, but rather it's more valuable, it's more progressive, it's consistent, and it's responsibly pervasive. That is what I want to say. So this is what it exactly the figure looks like of the theory. And this is Martin basically considered this appraisal as evaluation, negotiation of attitudes, which have three parts: affect, judgment, and appreciation, the intensity of emotions through this, the alliance with the respective audiences that we get from attitude. Then this is basically the attitude, engagement, and amplification. They are placed within the Gandhian Trinity as attitude of reintegration through shared hopes of one vision, resilience over the engagement of collective action through shared commitments, and amplifying recovery from events or situations to fostering change through shared values. Now, the degree is, of course, the degree of intensity, high, medium, and low varies, and how these are the language objects. So before coming to the Trinity, I would just give a very short introduction of what is the genesis of sustainable discourses. Um, Basically, sustainable values, attitudes, skills, and practices in one's lifestyle remain one of the greatest challenges in all societies. Now, with the rising need and recognition for sustainability development models of any nation and within any nation, this discourse, development discourse, gets characterized in terms of sincere dialogues, as we see through Mahatma, to sustained values within the recent discourses of modernity. When contemplating of what values are deemed necessary, Gandhian ideals strike at the very first place for optimistic essentialism and relevance today. Now, this is what the Trinity looks like. It's like that link. It basically, each of these aspects have taken an influence from the positive discourse analysis of appraisal, and have made that Trinity into attitude of reintegration, engaging resilience, and amplifying recovery. Now, these reintegration encompasses communicative rationality, the reasons within, suppose, enlightened communication, non-violence, positive actions, duties above rights, then engaging resilience with motivations, self-introspective moral bindings, or ideological dilemmas, call it. And lastly is the coping and the firm commitments and recovery, which is amplified through the value-based systems of empowerment, adjustments, and leading to growth. Now, let me give you a small example through this. Now, the complexity of nonviolence is greater than how people perceive it. Nonviolence is not synonymous to the non-existence of violence. Rather, it is an exercise of influence via collective power to foster change without inquiry to the opponent. So when I'm talking about exercise of influence via collective power, that is attitude, which is the reintegration, and through the shared hopes to foster change. Then when I say it's an ethical action grounded on a school of thought, discerns the truth within a conflict, trusts in cooperation, and looks at violence something to be evaded, this is engaging resilience through shared values. What our moral values talk about? How should I live? Something like that. Then the willingness to accept the weight of like suffering to break the sequence of violence is the amplifying recovery, which is the shared commitments. And if you can see, this was his most famous saying in his autobiography, that experience has taught me that silence is a part of spiritual disciplines of a votary of truth. Now, proneness to exaggerate, to suppress or modify the truth wittingly or unwittingly is a natural weakness of man. And silence, he knew that it is necessary to surmount it. That is what he says. So this became actually one of the means to promulgate change. And this is indeed powerful because it is not signifying passivity, but implicit referencing of sincere dialogues. It is an center of strength. It is an center of truth. And if you look into his videos, he knew exactly the works of deduction, how to deduce arguments. He always annotated with reminders to himself about tempo, about rhythm, when to be silent to struggle for the right word, or pause for audience response for heckling or opinions. So his acts, as a consequence, felt more like parsing than prose. And unlike others, he knew that what is not said impacts the audience as much as what is. To bring about empowered change, a pregnant pause whets appetite, an unanswered question hangs heavily, an abrupt redirection defers logical resolution. So let's not call it manipulation. I would rather call it the attitude of reintegration, which is basically the syncresis. Now, this syncresis is basically an argumentative strategy to share that Gandhi used instruction rather than manipulation. So it is not maneuvering, it's instruction for the good, for the better world. So this is also valuable as a vital resource because this discovers and transforms self and society through positive roles as a response. It is not reaction. If you look at the examples that I've highlighted and the trinity that I've actually placed within, is the dimensions of communication, harmonious communication into this actually what I call is the spatial, temporal, figurative retreat, because it is as persuasively evocative as metaphorical and as literal. So what does this provocation by issuing a challenge that he says that I want you to understand two things very clearly. So he's actually provocating expansion of duties and responsibilities over rights, and that is beyond the selfless individual. So this deductive reasoning makes one or more proposition and then works through logical implications. And this is how we understand it. This is the attitude, which is the affect, the security, affect or security that he wants to say that you would be enjoined to carry. A great responsibility is the judgment that he says, a social sanction, which is quite positive in nature. Now, this attitudinal system is at the heart core of the appraisal. And why? Because it is the expression of feelings and emotional reactions, which is further divided into judgments and decision-making processes to value things, which is the aesthetics. If you see here, shall be judged unworthy of the great gift, is the appreciation and the valuation that he's actually saying. And when he says that the judgment is of the social esteem, because why social esteem? Because he actually has placed that valuation of God, of the supreme authority, as the medium for his communication. So this is the phenomenon that the mind exercises or influences to make upon the audience. That is the effect, which is the emotions, which we can gauge over Gandhi's disappointment over imperfection. You can see when he says that it's imperfect. Let me just put that in place. I know that how imperfect ahimsa is, that is, he is disappointed. And amplification, he's augmenting it to the ideal, because there's no failure, final failure or defeat, which is the social esteem, that you don't need to be worried about the consequences, just fight. I'm sorry. Yeah. So all the three have subjective positions of approval, disapproval, praise, criticism, explicit, implicit, and this is part of remedial action. Now, what does it do? It is systematic and artful because it highlights the purpose, what the author speaker wants the reader listeners to feel, think, or do. And this is part of integrationist discourse because it is participative power relations, collective agency of collective power, enlightened knowledge, and argumentative performativity of consilience. That is what I want to say. So here Gandhi wishes to bring about, he proposes constructing a specific identity and connecting an ideal audience group for discourses that share hopes for independence. And he then influences the audience's cognition, responses, and attitudes over a diverse range by exercising interpersonal functions. Now, it harnesses the dialogue of equals, basically. That is to share thoughts rather than imposing persuasion. Now, dialogue of equals was basically, has been taken from the term by Habermas and Billig. Now, Habermas is very much known for his theory of communicative action. So the image enables responsive rational dialogues to flourish, wherein there is a celebration of agreement, tribute and apology, argument to achieve agreement, and not as a more than a compromise, and brings about consensus rather than argument of discords. Now, this goal is basically to transform this implicit know-how into explicit know-that knowledge. That is what I'm calling enlightened knowledge, how we conduct ourselves in the realm of moral practical reasoning. In addition, nonviolent communication happens when the emotional processes respond to the following questions of empathy, while avoiding moralistic judgments. What do I mean when I say avoiding moralistic judgments? You're too selfish. You're not supposed to do this. You cannot do this. These are all these kinds of moralistic judgments that we come across in our daily life. Somebody between families, between academic environments, you can just sort of try to find out. These are moralistic judgments. And so we need to answer ourselves, why does a particular exigence, an event or situation affect me? In what ways does it affect my people or a particular social reference, which is the relevance? What are the consequences, implications, and how well to tackle these consequences together sustainably, which is the coping potential? These checks often occur automatically, unconsciously. But if you take into account the cautious optimism or the Gandhian ideals or the trinity of sustainability, they drive the problem-solving acts of communication or discourse. So basically, this is communicative rationality that I found in the first scales of sharing hopes, basically between the attitude of reintegration to resilience. Now, what does it mean? This is basically that describes that human rationality is a necessary outcome of successful communication. Now, this communicative rationality has been aligned with discourse ethics and rational reconstruction of Habermas. Now, Habermas is a German philosopher. He worked on discourse ethics and rational reconstruction. So this view of reason, it's communicative rationality, or call it communicative reason. It describes human rationality as a necessary outcome of successful communication. Successful outcome of reason, why agreement has to be reached, and what sort of agreement has to be reached, is therefore a view of reason in the form of public justification. Then it's engagement system, which is the engaging resilience through shared values. Now, this deals with language sourcing or positioning the interplay of other voices, attitudes, alternative propositions as intertextual components by the author speaker. Now, this basically engagement system has the expansion of faith to establish mutual trust, to strengthen relationships. And it is organic wholeness because it exercises a strong ethical barometer and its aesthetic component of logos, which is the logic, of pathos, which is the emotions, and of ethos, which is the credibility. And that interpretation you put into the world into the form of judgment, interpretation, and rational arguments, which is a larger psychic function of reception, depth perception, and reality. Now, what do these interdiscursive elements do? Now, they shift the pronouns from I to we. If you can see that I have faith, but if I move on to the next talk of him, he says that we must. So that is what it shifts. And it upholds God or the voiceless millions as the heteroglossic backdrop. That encompasses a lot of utterances, a lot of voices. And this engagement has 4 claims, which is basically proclaim, disclaim, for the dialogic expansion. Now, this a prioristic reasoning where he says that I have faith, therefore, in spite of our shortcomings that he's unhappy about it, he's amplified it, and mitigate how we will mitigate, because this is because God wanted to help us. Now, a prioristic reasoning start out with principles from the first, a priori, and to use them as the basis for accepting or rejecting facts is to do it the wrong way round. So if you call this is basically has been expanded through sharp lexicon and charged emotions. When he says that I feel myself to a greater friend of the British, he's not criticizing them, but he actually is saying that I want to evade them for their mistakes. I want to save them from their mistakes. That is the judgment that he says, social sanction, social esteem. Look at the use of modality here. Now here, the modal words like necessity, the engagement, proclaim, judgment, these are all the kinds of amplified things that he talks about. Now in the last one, where he says that there is an expression of urgency, here he is a mantra, a short one that he says, we've all heard do or die. This is bifurcation, which means that limiting the choices between 2 alternatives, or you can say the either or situation. And argumentum of a fortiori is basically argument from strength, where he says that it imprints in your hearts. That is what he says. You may imprint it in your hearts because every breath of yours gives impression to it. So what does it do? This sort of argumentation, according to Tyndall, Christopher Tyndall, 2004, is a good communication because positive results could emerge from the process of anticipation, involvement, and response. And if you've heard of Paul Grice, which he's from the communicative, he's done a lot of work on communication, he calls it canonical inference patterns. Because Gandhi did not say anything to turn the listeners into a riot, but over an activity defining disagreements with argument. So if you see the examples where he highlights the British and the mistakes, he's actually doing non-argument. Because the ideas.
Please conclude it. Your time is up.
Yeah, explored adversities that only elevated reasonings could heal. Now, this is biological, ideological dilemmas which are part of the engagement from the shared values. This is dilemmas because categorical moral reasoning, that I would call it, which is self-introspective, and it brings the face to the forefront. Now, face, what it says, tearing the person into 2 parts. what should I do, why and what we believe, and what is the right thing to do, and putting the other above than egotism of self. That is what I want to say. So this is common ideological themes. Then this is graduation or amplification system, which is the last one, which is the shared commitments through cautious optimism, facing the conscience phase, and the dynamics of dilemma, doing right, expressive urgency, spans timelines. If you read his examples, where he says about the cause and effect relationships, which is critically but not pessimistically, that makes the invisible connotations visible. And this sustainable rhythm of discourses automatically shifted from competitivity to the society of equals on a humanitarian level. And the sustained compassion, consilience, consolidation, commitment, and the willingness to listen and admit the wrongs had the common place that Gandhi wanted. Backdrop of time, place, and setting, of course. Then this processing of emotions and justice are the main cognitive episodes that have a felt character. Now, when I talk of face, this face means that it is not any mere physical face. It is an aesthetic or an organic face, an intangible enigma that is defenseless and helpless. And the face, often within the purview of positive appraisal approaches, sympathizes and offers itself to the self's compassion and obligation while inducing a vulnerability. That is what the face is. And so his arguments use the language of choice and decisions to tap into the social power of restoring relationships. Now, most productive arguments, which have the healing effect, always use the future tense. And if we rely on the past, that is exactly where conflict develops. And I've actually told you the Tyndale's actively defining disagreements, canonical inference patterns, which explored elevated reasonings. Next is, I'm sorry. Okay, this is the last one. This stimulate audiences' emotions, change its opinions, and get them to act. These are three primary jobs that Gandhi performs, because amplification deals with that scaling of meaning, with the raised credibility. And if you've seen his words, kill me, bullets, witness, topos of discussions, he packs a lot in a short space. Now, conscious optimism, therefore, that is what encourages the hearer to engage in further inferential processes, that lead him to abandon an infelicitous interpretation that accidentally appears irrelevant. So this cautious optimism, that we need to be aware of what we are doing. Pronoun as in we is intensifiers of decorum, deductive reasoning. Symboliticons is a judicial, deliberative rhetoric as part of his emphatic discussions, dealing with choices, what-if scenarios or probabilities. Then cause and effect through dilemmas. So at the last, what it does is overall that it controls the issue, it fixes the blame of the people against the ruling parties, meet common values, make a choice from present to future tense that keeps the argument in the right tense, and therefore blame is equals to past, whereas the present choice would be the future. That's all that I have to say. So this was all about his trinity of sustainability. That's his conclusion. A call to conscious, which is dense and thought-provoking, prism of harmonious integration from the vast chronicle into a more conversational present, practical problem solving and sustainable discourses. These are the references. Thank you.